Hello YouTube, welcome back to the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, and we will be talking to you today, the solar flash update of August 12th, where I'm at. If you're watching me live, it might still be August 11th. So we're going to take a look at some recent stuff that I've found through some research that indicates that the solar event may have driven elites underground, seeking to escape the ascension. Definitely the climate change narrative heats up as a result of what's been happening weather-wise, and sadly, of course, there was the devastating fires on Maui, which now is being used as something that the mainstream media is going to talk about, and it's going to turn into a big climate change discussion. So I'll give you some of my thoughts on that. Turns out that alien abductions, alien is in quotes, alien abductions are increasing. And through more of my research, I'm finding out that the dates for 2023, 2024 have been talked about for a long time, having to do with the solar flash, long before we've been experiencing the solar storms we've been experiencing. And perhaps we'll get into the idea that there are perhaps multiple Earths simultaneously existing. Which Earth are you going to be living in? What power do you have to bring that about? We will be talking about that. Welcome back to the channel. This is Mahadev, the Thunder Wizard. And on this channel, I do give you specific tools. It's not just about talking. Please, look, if you want to just listen to people talk, there's no shortage of channels, ufology channels. I mean, there's just no shortage of channels where people just talk and talk and talk. If that's what you want, there's plenty of places to go. I do talk a lot, so of course you're welcome here. But if you really appreciate what I do on this channel, show me that you appreciate by doing the practices. Go on to the YouTube channel page, the Thunder Wizard DOTCOM YouTube channel page. Go to the playlists. Start doing some of the exercises. Do the Hool breath 10 minutes a day. The Huad breath. Do something. Learn how to do basic energy work, and of course the guided interdimensional meditations. If you're dead serious about wanting to advance and to transform your body, to make yourself more able to handle the shift as it comes, go here to thunderwizard.com, click around and subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. You can also read my books. I have I don't know how many, 30 books, but there are 3 specifically which I think are the most important for you to read. This one here, Interdimensional Revolution. Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth is the second one. And the third one is called The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. You can find all those books. They're cheap as hell. You can find them on Amazon, Kindle, or Audible. And anyway, make use of the resources. It's the most important thing you can do. I can tell you this. If you do nothing, there's a chance that this shift is going to be difficult for you. So if you don't want this to be a difficult shift, then you're going to have to do some work. And I give you the tools. Follow my instructions. I guarantee you your life will change. All right. So back to solar flash update, August 12th. Solar event drives elites underground. Later on in this video, stay till the end because I'm going to read from an article that I found. So let me just be clear again, if you're new to the channel. I am not a ufologist. I am not somebody that has spent my life following UFOs. I am not somebody who's been, I didn't even believe in any kind of ascension up until a year ago. I didn't believe it existed. When people would come on the channel and talk about the shift to 5D and the ascension, I would destroy them. I would attack them as being lost in fantasy, or they had victim mentality or new age nonsense. It is true that unfortunately the majority of the stuff that you hear and see and read about all of that is at best conflated with a bunch of fantasy and unconfirmed nonsense and victim mentality and childish, destructive, at best, just bubblegum nonsense. So it is true, unfortunately, that is still the case. But I want you to understand, I did not believe in any of that. Although I was a spiritual practitioner, and even though I taught high-level energy practice, and even though I practiced a form of energy work in martial art that had to do with all kinds of supernatural stuff, I could prove it physically. If you were, to work with me physically, I could show you. It wasn't talk. I could physically show you how somebody can channel energies and do all kinds of things and bend the laws of physics. So I'm an incredibly practical person. I do not teach anything I haven't personally experienced, and I certainly don't teach something I read somewhere that somebody said. I've never been that way. I don't do that. So anything I talk about is something that I myself have personally accomplished or achieved or experienced. And if it's not, I will tell you. So today I'm going to be reading from an article that I found that the reason why I find it interesting is because, again, I never heard of this. I didn't know this solar flash thing existed. It wasn't even something I had glanced on. I'd never heard of it. I had heard people talking about ascension, but that was pretty much it. And that's because I just, like I said, I stay in my own little bubble, and the practices that I do, that's where I learn what I learn from. I'm not somebody that spent my time following anybody, anywhere, YouTube or otherwise. So for me to be talking about the solar flash, it means that I have had some kind of personal experiences that lend me to believe this is real. And as you know, if you're not new to my channel, you know that in June of 2022, I began what's called human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials, and I did that because I wanted to prove to myself once and for all that this was nonsense. And I watched Dr. Greer's film, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and I said, wow, these people are interacting with higher dimensional energy beings. I want to learn higher meditation practices. That was my main intent for doing it. And after the third try, I was successful in having a physical as well as interdimensional contact experience, and that experience lasted for at least 3 months solid, going sometimes all day. If you remember, if you go back to those videos that I put up towards the end of June, there's a good period of at least 2 weeks where I wasn't making videos, and I came on and said I can't function right now. I'm not in a good place. My body's out of whack, and I'm losing my mind here. It was because I was having daily contact experience with higher dimensional extraterrestrial beings. I was having dreams, and I was having, they were doing work on me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and my foot would be up in the air, and there would be energy flowing through me, and it was very wonderful and amazing, and it was also very frightening. I'd never experienced anything like that. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about abductions. Abductions are something completely different. We're going to talk on that. If you really want to know what abductions are, I talk about it. In fact, I prove to you in this book, Interdimensional Revolution, I prove to you what abductions really are and why you have nothing to fear when it comes to contacting higher dimensional beings. So again, I'm laying this foundation because I'm going to read this article, and the only reason that I find this article so compelling isn't because I believe 100% of what this guy says, and I haven't made a decision about whether or not I trust or believe in this guy one way or another, because there's, people are still human. So even if there is some truth, just like with me, even if there's some truth to what I say, I'm a human being and I'm perfectly capable of conflating the truth with falsehoods or fantasies or fears or just misunderstandings. So, and I've also learned just because somebody has extensive interaction with extraterrestrial or higher dimensional beings, it does not take away their humanity in any way, shape, or form. I'm just as human as I was before. So I'm not saying that I believe this guy 100%, but what I find interesting is that he is explaining the solar flash in 2016, supposedly based on information he received from higher dimensional beings, and he's saying the same thing that the ETs told me. And the reason why that is so helpful for me is because, again, I don't, look, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a channeler. I'm not a psychic. I may have some of those abilities like, a lot of people do, but I'm not into that. I'm not one of those people. So just because I've had an experience, just because I believe that I've interacted with higher dimensional beings in ways that I can prove, I have video and audio proof that this has happened and is continuing to happen, that still doesn't mean I completely buy into it, because it is so hard to believe. I'm trying to I'm trying to make the argument here that, there is no shortage of people out there that the moment they have anything slightly, supernatural, they see angel numbers on their phone, 111 or 222, and all of a sudden that's proof that, that happens to their phone at least twice a day. It's not a big deal. There's so many people out there that are just waiting for any reason to justify, spiritualizing their experience. I'm not one of those people. The whole breath, I'll write it down here, because if you just go Google it, all you have to do is just Google this. You don't even have to look for it on my channel. You can learn how to do the whole breath. It was one of the first things that I learned looking back on it from higher dimensional beings, and it has turned out to be the single most healing, grounding, and powerful energy practice that I've ever experienced. And I teach it and have taught it on this channel for free for a long time for that very reason. And I have my beliefs on where that came from, thousands and thousands of years ago, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until that I researched it that I saw corroborations that proved to me I wasn't making it up. That's the kind of person I am. Until I can corroborate it, I'm not going to buy into it. It could just be me having a fantasy. Sometimes our fantasies coincide with reality, and that's a nice spiritual thing, but it doesn't mean that it's objectively coming from anything specific. So when I want to talk about the solar flash, and I want to share with you what I was told, and I'm finding that somebody else was talking about this, a lot of people were talking about it, now almost 10 years ago, long before I ever even knew this thing existed. That's evidence to me that this is a real thing. Okay? So, as always, please don't take my word for anything. Please don't do that. In fact, you will annoy me if you're somebody that just listens to me talk. You will annoy the crap out of me, because it doesn't serve you. Everything that I share with you is designed, the intent behind sharing it with you is that you will take it and go physically, personally do it. I don't want you to believe in me. I want you to believe in you, and I want you to prove or disprove anything that I teach you. And so far, based on what I've seen, feedback I've gotten, is that every single person that has worked with me and follows my instructions to the letter consistently, their lives drastically change for the better. They might go through some challenging experiences, and especially if you're my apprentice, if you're working with me directly, there are going to be times when you're not going to like, what I'm saying to you, or you're not going to like the experiences you're having. But if you stick with it, when you get to the other side, you're going to realize that the practices are what's important, not me. I hope I make that clear. So the reason, again, I'm doing that is so that you'll listen to what I'm saying and that you will do what you can to experience it. So I recommend every single person listening to me, it's more important now than ever that you do the interdimensional guided meditations on this channel. You learn how to do that yourself. And if you're dead serious about it, especially if you need guidance, subscribe to the 90-day challenge. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. Read my books. They're super cheap. There's no excuse. Unless you're homeless or you're 10 years old living with your parents, there's no reason why you can't afford a $20 book. There's just no reason for it. Just stop giving yourself excuses to give yourself the things that you want. All right, let's get back on track here. So I'm going to read in here, maybe I'll get to it, but if I don't, the solar event supposedly has driven elites underground because they're trying to escape the solar flash. Now I'm going to read, maybe I'll find it, I'm going to bounce through this article because it's long, but I'm going to read from this article. Supposedly I don't know if you know who this guy is. His name is Corey Goode. You can go look him up, COREYGOODE, Corey Goode. Claims to be an insider for some secret unacknowledged military time travel alien portal thing. Sounds very cheesy and all that kind of stuff. The only reason I'm taking him seriously is because the things he's saying are so much in line with what I've experienced that there might be something to this. He might have some information. But according to him, the elites have known of this solar event, but they didn't know what to make of it. They didn't understand it. Now, unlike me, they didn't get their information from higher dimensional beings. They got their information from using technology. So if you're not familiar with it, the Looking Glass Project, you can go look it up yourself. Looking Glass Project. There's a bunch of stuff. There's a few things on there, but this one has to do with basically using a mirror. It's very old technology. It goes all the way back to at least to the Sumerians, if not before. In fact, that's the main reason we invaded Iraq, in case you didn't know. The reason why the U.S. invaded Iraq was because there was an actual very old looking glass piece of equipment dating back to the time of the Sumerians. And Iraq had it. Saddam Hussein had it. And the United States wanted it. The elites in the United States wanted it. So according to this this other whistleblower whose name I don't remember, this looking glass is basically a cozy rev mirror. So this is something you can go and you can see if you can find somebody and make this. There are people that make these things. Don't ask me about it. I haven't made one, but you can go look for it yourself. Cozy Rev mirror, KOZYREV mirror. This is something that was invented and or discovered or created by a Russian scientist, and his experiments about it were amazing. Created portals in space-time, did all kinds of other things, created communications with ETs and higher dimensional beings. You could go back and forward in time. You could see past events. This Russian guy experienced that. And soon after, he was killed. Surprise, surprise. And so this looking glass piece of technology that goes back all the way to the Sumerians is basically, I believe it's a cozy rev mirror. I don't know, but I think that's what it is. And it's not impossible to make. You don't need super high technology to create it. You just need to create, a shiny mirror surface and create sort of like this, this shell thing so that the mirrors are facing each other, and it bends the light in such a way that it can do all kinds of crazy things. So what these people were doing, hooking it up to computers, the deep state people, is that this was way back before now, before 2012 even. And they were using this to know what they could do to manipulate. Now bear in mind, this has everything to do with your consciousness. This is why it's so important that you do these practices I'm giving you. It's so important that you do that, because the most important tool that anybody has that's even more powerful than any being in the universe, is your consciousness. And not just your thinking. People say consciousness, oh, I'm going to think good thoughts. That's going to be close to meaningless if you have a bunch of unresolved emotional issues, because that's going to overtake your thinking, which is why you need to look at yourself, and why I tell people they should work the 12 steps, go to 12-step programs, work with a psychologist, work with a teacher, definitely have a meditation practice, because that's how you clean out your unconscious. But when I say consciousness, what I mean is being able to shift your energy. And most people can't do that just by choosing to. Let me repeat myself. Most people cannot change their energy frequency simply by choosing to. So if you don't have that ability, I'm not one of those people. I grew up in a really, really toxic environment. So I've had to work my way into the consciousness that I have. It wasn't something that just fell into my lap. And my experience is that most people are like me to some degree. There are physical practices that you can do, sometimes very simple movements, mantra, these kinds of things will begin to shift your energy up. And what this will do is this will awaken you to the state of consciousness that you have. And then when you're conscious of it, then you can make some decisions and take some actions that will continue to shift your vibration up. So, as I was saying, the elites have had these kinds of technologies, and they've used more and more of their technology to make this into some super looking glass thing where you can decide with a computer to look forward into the future and see what things you can do to the population's mindset, which will allow you to get control over them. So in other words, you could type into the computer, what happens if in 2001 we fake a terrorist attack on the Twin Towers? And then you could look and say, oh, that's going to create a lot of fear. That then we can pass laws that reduce people's freedom, and then we can start introducing that. Okay, what happens if we were to create some health disaster that would frighten the whole world? Well, then you can do things like create digital passports so that you can't get on a plane. Well, they're looking to see what they can do to get more and more control over your mind, and what events they can create which will keep them in control. Because what they found out by looking at this is that the human race is destined for an ascension event. And they want to prevent that if they can. And if they can't prevent it, then they want to, just like happened in the past 3 years, they want to get as much money as they can, much control as they can for as long as they can. So apparently, according to them, they used this Cozy Rev mirror, I'm assuming, and they saw that no matter what they did, no matter how many wars they started, or no matter how many false, fearful events they created, or no matter how many bombs they blew up, or whatever they did, they saw that sometime after 2012, there was an ascension event that was something they could not prevent. No matter how hard they tried, they could not get past that. That once they got to 2012, everything went blank. And so they also saw that there was going to be a solar event, and they called it by different names. This is, by the way, the reason why you are hearing the solar flash is going to destroy the Earth. If you've read, if you've seen those videos, people talking about the solar flash is going to burn up the earth and all, that's why you're hearing that. Because the people who are looking at it through a cozy rev mirror, who don't have consciousness, they see this event which takes away all their power. They're going to see it from that perspective. So they didn't know, according to this, I'll read it. Hopefully I'll find it and read it. According to this guy, they couldn't tell, and remember, this guy was writing back in 2016. So he, I'll read it, but he said that they couldn't figure out if the solar event was going to create an ascension event where all humans were going to ascend, or if it was going to be something that destroyed things and threw it down to another level or destroyed the earth. So they're afraid of this. They're afraid of it because, for two reasons. If it's an ascension event, people become awakened. It means that they can no longer control you with money, with government, with fear, with disease, with war. They can't control you with any of it because you won't buy into it. So that's frightening to them because they're psychopaths. They're narcissists. Narcissists can't function if they don't have people to control. If they can't keep people hostage, they can't function. They can't function if you're not afraid of them. You either worship them or you're afraid of them, just like Jehovah. If they don't have that kind of control, they completely lose it. It'll kill them. So they don't know what this solar event's going to do. So they're afraid of it. They're afraid of you awakening, and they're afraid of it destroying them. So one of the plans that they've had was, this solar event is going to come, and if it comes and destroys the world, the whole world goes in flames, then they're going to hide underground and wait till it's over, and then they're going to come back out and repopulate, take over the earth again. So you have to understand that when we start talking about global warming. You have to understand that there's a group of people that are wanting global warming to come in the most destructive way possible. We'll talk about that in a bit. Oops, that's not what I want to do. So, alien abductions are increasing. I'm just sharing with you the scuttlebutt. And again, I talk about what alien abductions really are. In fact, I prove to you what they are in my book, Interdimensional Revolution. I made a video about it on YouTube, and YouTube blocked me. That has to tell you something. When I made a video telling you specifically what the whole point of alien abductions are and how they're being used to enslave you and control you, when I make a video like that and YouTube takes it down and bans me for a week, that gives you an idea that I obviously stepped on some truth there. You can find that on my Rumble channel if you want. Go looking for it. But aliens are not extraterrestrials. I will just tell you that. Aliens are not higher dimensional beings, and they are not extraterrestrials. So the aliens, I will say, are in fact in cahoots with the so-called cabal or deep state. I don't want to say anything beyond that because, again, I might say something too truthful and upset some people. Yeah, and then as I said earlier, the Ascension event seems to be likely this year or next year, and that's not coming from me. That's coming from people talking about it almost 10 years ago. By the way, in case you don't know, the reason why the elites, as they're looking at the Cozy Rev mirror, trying to figure out how they can create the perfect timeline to own and control you, the reason why things went blank after 2012 is because the Mayan prophecy turns out to be true. Now, the Mayan prophecy, I was alive in 2012, and if you were old enough to remember, people thought that the world was going to end in 2012, and it didn't. And so people went, well, so much for that. But the Mayan prophecy didn't say that the world was going to end. It said this world is going to shift into another world. It also said that the Earth and the sun, and as it turns out, all of the planets and all of the stars in our visible sky, we're going to go through a wormhole through the center of the galaxy and come out, on another side of the galaxy. And that would be a different Earth. And as it turns out, the Mandela effect proves that. There's one aspect of the Mandela effect, you can go look it up. Who's the big famous astrophysicist, Tyson something or other? There's a video of him talking, probably I think around 2016, where he himself says that the Earth is in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy. And I remember being told that the Earth is on the very outside trailing edge, like almost out of the galaxy. It's so far on the edge of the galaxy and in the Sagittarius arm. And that's not true anymore. It turns out that the Earth is now halfway between the center and the outside of the galaxy, on the complete other side of the galaxy, about 73,000 light years or 73,000 light years. I think that's, anyway, a really long way away on the other side of the galaxy. And it's in the Orion arm. And it's not that science woke up one day and said, oh, we thought it was in the, on the edge of the galaxy in the Sagittarius arm. But now none of that happened. There was no announcement. All of a sudden, the historical records and the scientific records just started changing. Until now, it's just common knowledge. Oh yeah, the Earth is in. So what it means is that the Mayans were right, that the Earth, the sun, by the way, the sun is a different color now than it was. It used to be yellow. The Earth and the sun and all of the stars, meaning all of the zodiac stars around us, went through a wormhole. We ended up on the other side of the galaxy. So that's why when they're looking at their Cozy Rev mirror, their looking glass technology, the elites couldn't see past 2012 because Earth was no longer there. And they were able to determine somehow, I don't know how they figured out the solar flash event, but they knew it was coming, which is why I was going to put a link in here, but again, you can search for it. Somebody said that I had made up some conspiracy theory about governments and Bill Gates wanting to put chemicals in the atmosphere to block out the sun. It's a plan that they're going to go forward. In fact, videos are coming out now. Watch what happens, especially after this disaster in Maui, which is going to be blamed on global warming. You're going to hear people start talking about we need to block out the sun. We need to, and if you live in places like Southern California, you see that happening. There are people on a daily basis telling me, I don't live there anymore. I don't want to ever live there again. But people are telling me that they're seeing planes, that show up in the late morning and they crisscross the sky and just these trails until, by midday, it's cloudy and there's just this haze. It's already happening. And in one video that I saw, I could, I think I don't, do I have the link to that video? Let's see, is that it? I do. I'm going to give you a link right now. I'm going to put it in. This is a video about this very thing so that you know that I'm not making this up. And on this video, the rest of the video starts talking about, switching to non-meat diet and other nonsense like that. I got nothing against that if people do that for the right reasons. But anyway, I don't want to get into that can of worms. So this is block out the sun video. There, you can go watch it yourself. What I found interesting on that video is that you know, this is a video that's trying to say this is a good idea. We have to combat global warming. We have to save the planet. I appreciate the sentiment. I don't think that they're accurate for a bunch of other reasons, but, and it's, let me be clear, it's not because I don't believe in the concept of global warming. I do. But the interesting thing about that is that the people who are controlling the media, the people who are controlling the narrative about global warming, are the very people who created global warming. Because the very people who own the giant smokestacks and factories that are belching out far more, fossil fuels, greenhouse gases, and the very people who make trillions of dollars every year on you buying petroleum to put into your car, those are the same people who are controlling the narrative and saying that we have to fight global warming. But the way they do that is not to go, you know what, we're going to stop drilling for oil, we're going to create emission-free vehicles, we're going to create ways that you can power your home because we have the technology to power your home with anything other than all of these fossil fuels. They're not doing that. They're telling you that, you know, if you live in the UK, that they're going to tell you you can't drive your car because it releases emissions. They're going to lock you down. They're going to block out the sun. One of the interesting things on this video is that this innocent guy is asking a scientist about this and said, what do you think about this? And the guy says, well, those chemicals certainly would be able to block out the sun, but in order for it to work, listen to this, in order for it to work, you would have to have thousands of planes flying 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a very specific grid to block out the sun. And he says an easier way to do that is just simply avoid using fossil fuels. So the very people who are giving you this, and it's going to increase now. You know, I, by the way, have my doubts about what happened in Maui. Let me just put it that way. You know, what I find most interesting about the coverage of this is that I haven't heard one news person ask the question, how did the fire start? Because it had to have started. Listen, high winds don't cause fires. Fires don't erupt because it's windy. Fires don't erupt because it's warm. That's not how fires start. As long as I've been alive, I've never once heard of wildfires on Hawaiian Islands. Maybe they've happened. I've never heard of it. I've certainly never heard of devastating wildfires on any Hawaiian island. So I find it a little coincidental that this happens to such a huge degree. And of course, the response is going to be, well, you see, this is how bad global warming has become. And again, I'm not a global warming denier. I understand that concept. We have a closed system, and we have an atmosphere, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying I believe it or disbelieve it, but that's a logical thing. So let's stop spewing stuff into the atmosphere. We could have done that a long time ago. You know, the truth is that 100 years ago, we're not talking about, Tesla and all of his, amazing understanding about free energy. But even 100 years ago, people understood that, in fact, electric cars were among the first. Diesel. The diesel engine was created by somebody who wanted to use cooking oil, used cooking oil, which would mean it would be really inexpensive. And, what ended up happening, the powers that be said, well, we'll keep the diesel engine, but we're only going to make it, petroleum-based. And it's still against the law. I don't know if you know this. It's against the law in many places in the world to use cooking oil in your diesel engine. If cops smell what smells like French fries coming out of the back of your car, they'll pull you over and give you a ticket. So the whole narrative of wanting to get rid of fossil fuels and all of that, the very people who are presenting this narrative are full of crap. They don't want you to do that. They want you to use fossil fuels, but they want to find ways to use the very global warming they've created as a means to control you, to make you frightened. This whole thing in, whatever started these fires in Maui, again, I have my doubts about how that started, but even if it started naturally, this is going to be used to frighten you. And interestingly enough, the World Health Organization is talking about using digital identification where they have all of your medical records, and they're already talking about when there's natural disasters and when there are people who need to leave war zones, we need to give them these digital identification things, which have also whether or not you've been or not, and they will use global warming to tell you, oh, did you get your digital passport? Oh, we need that. Why? Well, because you're escaping, climate crisis. Yeah, and what does that have to do with whether or not I got that or not? Oh, well, because we're just putting it all, we're just so that we have the records. It's for your safety. It's for your health. It's for your, it's all for you. Oh my God, global warming. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and get to the article here. So this article was written in 2016, and it's you can go look for it. It's on exopolitics.org. This is a ufology, and let me be clear: I am not a ufologist. I'm not a fan of ufology, but I'll save that rant for another day. This is on exopolitics.org. And on June 15th, 2016, this guy's writing this. So let's see, I'll start with some interesting stuff here. By the way, I have a link in the description about the truth about the secret government UFO program. Which, by the way, is not being talked about on mainstream media, but that's what the real whistleblowers are talking about. And on that is a whistleblower who worked in Antarctica and worked on a site that, according to him, is used to communicate with our own Space Force. So apparently, human beings have a Space Force out in space already, traveling the solar system, and that we have faster than light communication abilities, that the same thing that allows you the ability to communicate faster than light can also be used as a weapon that would be powerful enough to take down actual extraterrestrial vehicles, and that we actually do have a human created Space Force. Anyway, so let's see here. June 15th, I'm reading now from the article. I received an informal briefing by Secret Space Program whistleblower Corey Good. I don't know. About recent events that include an aerial battle over Antarctica involving various syndicate groups of the Cabal Illuminati that had, over the last 6 months, fled there, and also the current status of negotiations involving different extraterrestrial and inner Earth civilizations over open contact with humanity. So, Good elaborated in his June 15th briefing that what the syndicate groups, global elites, Cabal, Illuminati, feared was huge solar storms predicted to hit the Earth. The so-called solar kill shot, long predicted by the remote viewer Ed Dames, was imminent, according to him in an interview on March 21st, 2016. The syndicate groups could not easily leave the Earth for refuge on off-planet locations due to a recent lockdown on airspace on and around Earth by what Good describes as lower level SSP, secret space programs, comprising the National Reconnaissance Office, the U.S. Air Force Space Command. The latter had deployed technology establishing an Earth defense grid coordinated from an air and space traffic control established on the moon. So far, I don't believe it, but I don't disbelieve anything I've just read. I believe that all of that is absolutely possible, if not going on. There was one time early on in my interactions with ETs where I asked, what's going on the moon? And I got a flash in my mind. It was like, somebody was broadcasting, into my mind a picture. And I saw a space station on the moon that was mining. And as you know, now it's opened that NASA is talking about going on the moon to mine for fuels that they can, use. So I find that very interesting. What else? Okay, the syndicate groups chose to flee instead to Antarctica as opposed to fleeing to outer space. The syndicate groups chose to flee instead to Antarctica, South America, where underground locations provided some safety. Do you remember what happened during the pandemic? Even though being outside in the fresh air and being at the beach in fresh air, fresh salt air, I mean, the likelihood of being in a windy, salty, beach area, the likelihood of getting somebody's respiratory illness is almost zilch. Instead, what they do, they made you stay indoors. In fact, you couldn't leave. In some places, if you left, you got arrested. Still going on in a lot of places around the world. So I find that very interesting. Wait, I just lost my picture. Okay, there we go. I find that very interesting. This is the mindset of the Illuminati. Remember, they're looking at the future, but they're not looking at it because of consciousness. They're looking at it because of a piece of technology, and they're interpreting it with their fearful 3D psychopathic narcissistic brains. So when they see a flash of light hitting the earth, which transforms everything and it takes away their power, they're going to be afraid of the sun. Again, it's like vampires. This is what vampires are afraid of. Vampires are afraid of the sun because the symbolism that vampires don't have a soul. How do you know that? Because when you look in the mirror, you can't see them. This is all symbolism saying that vampires are soulless, and vampires are nothing more than a symbol of a narcissist. Narcissists don't have identities. They have souls, unfortunately. Fortunately, they have souls, but unfortunately, they're so psychologically damaged that they don't have an identity. And so they don't feel as though they have a soul. And so for them to see this, it's only natural that their unconscious experiences, they're going to be afraid of the sun. And the reason for that is there's a reason why the most chanted mantra in history is the Gayatri mantra. I have videos on this channel if you want to play the Gayatri mantra and chant along with it. The Gayatri mantra is the most chanted and most widely respected mantra in history. It's chanted by Buddhists as well as Hindus, and I think as others like Jains and others chant that, and it's the oldest mantra in history. And anybody who, if you do any of this higher dimensional, interdimensional meditation, you're going to find that sunlight is actually, you're going to feel it. Like I feel it every morning when the sun rises to a certain level. My whole body lights up. I can feel it. And it feels like a higher dimensional being has entered the room. And I do this almost on a daily basis. I'll be woken up by the energy. I'll go, is somebody here? But it's the sun, because the sun really is what brings enlightenment. The Gayatri mantra is the most important part of it is Om Tat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dimahi Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, which is, may that light of the sun illumine my thoughts and awaken me. That's bad. That's not an actual complete translation, but that's the gist of it. So it only makes sense that the Illuminati are going to run underground. They don't want to wake up, because why are people, if you want to know why there are going to be people who won't shift up, it's going to be for this reason. Because when you shift out of our three-dimensional reality, you will have to allow yourself to be loved and seen on the deepest level. And to the degree that you have been traumatized by dysfunctional family or just a dysfunctional earth, the level of trauma you've received is going to make it frightening and painful for you to be loved, because you have this protective sheet of armor, which is your pain. If you're an angry person, it'll be your anger. And, you'll be violent and angry. It's because you're in a lot of pain. If you were to let go of that anger and that violence, you would have to get on your knees and cry like a little baby, because it was so sad that you didn't get the love that you needed. If you're the other side of it, if you're a frightened empath, super empath, heyoka, then you're going to, instead of being angry and violent, you're going to be a victim, and you're going to buy into being angry and being in a victim mentality, and you're going to want to talk about evil aliens and false beings of light, and you're going to want to talk about, you're going to want to watch videos for the rest of your life about narcissist this and narcissist that, because your victim mentality is your protection. And what happens for everybody is they're going to need to mourn. They're going to need to cry over how sad it was that you didn't get loved. So when real love comes to you, it's going to feel like a complete assault. Little kids are going to be fine. Happy, healthy little kids, they're not even going to notice it. People who have been working on themselves, it'll be a release, and they'll be able to release even more. People who are running from themselves, who refuse to look at themselves, refuse to do the work. Those people, when love hits them from the sun, it's going to make them want to run away. This is why the elites are running underground. I completely believe that part. That when they saw it, they don't know what it means, and so they're getting their underground bases, and they're blocking out the sun, and they're creating scenarios and forcing you to stay out of the sun, because they think if you go out in the sun, then you'll become enlightened, and then they won't be able to control you. And not only that, but if you become enlightened, you might actually go talk to them and give them a hug and make them feel better. And they can't tolerate that. This is why people are going to shift out. And this is why, according to this guy, the Illuminati couldn't tell the difference of, is this going to shift people up, or is it going to push them down? Because it's going to do one or the other. It's going to do both. It's not an either or. It depends on your frequency. If your frequency is in the narcissistic codependent frequency, it'll knock you down a peg. You'll choose to do it, but it'll feel like it's knocking you down a peg. All right, let's keep going. The syndicate groups, I'm now reading again from the article, the syndicate groups chose to flee instead to Antarctica, South America, where underground locations provided some safety. Let's see what else. I think Corey Good's May 14th update went on to describe huge submarines used to transport people and cargo to Antarctica, as revealed to him by, none of that matters to me. Gonzalez later confirmed that these people and supplies were in many cases being transported to Antarctica via black submarines that were electromagnetic driven and the size of container ships. Okay, let's see what else. Okay, I don't care about that. And then supposedly the Illuminati fought with each other, some air battle over Antarctica for some reason, I don't know. All right, and then let's keep going. So, I'm going to go now to, yeah, okay. So somebody asked him a question. You have mentioned this again, this is in 2016. You have mentioned some, and the reason why I keep saying it's in 2016 is because ETs told me about the solar wave event in 2022. So, question. You have mentioned some confusion over when and how a solar flash event is going to play out over the next decade. Can you clarify? And this is, I guess, Corey Good talking. Some of the confusion was my own. I am still wrapping my head around all of the information and imagery I was shown while I spent 3 days with the Anshar. According to him, and I'm not saying, I'm not believing or disbelieving this, I don't know. According to him, there are humans millions of years in the future who traveled back in time because they apparently are the timeline, you know, the ideal timeline of how humans should and or could evolve. And according to them, there was sort of like having a reverse Mandela effect where their history was disappearing, and it was because there was some timeline offshoot in the past that was screwing. Anyway, like I said, it's very convoluted and whatever, but these Anshar are supposed to be time-traveling humans that live under the earth. Let's see. So some of the confusion was my own, he says. I'm still wrapping my head around all of the information and imagery I was shown while I spent 3 days with the Anshar. I have said for a while that I was told, this is Corey Good talking, that I was told that it was not one solar event, but a series of events that led up to one large event. That's exactly what they told me before I even knew what it was. If you remember, they gave me a dream. It wasn't a dream about a solar flash. There was a bunch of symbology and imagery that, you know, is only really for me. But I came out of it going, okay, so there's going to be a worldwide event that everybody's going to see in the sky that's going to shift everything up. And then the dream ended suddenly. It didn't tell me what it was. And I asked them, next time I meditated, I said, what is this event going to be? Is it going to be a bunch of spaceships? Because that's the only thing I can imagine. The only thing that would shift people out of their 3D isolationism was to see, oh my God, we're not alone. There's other conscious beings out there. And I thought the only beings that are going to be able to do that are these beings that are jolting me with this high dimensional energy. So I thought the only thing I can imagine is fleets of actual ET spaceships showing up and, you know, shutting down the world or something. Sorry. So I asked them, what is this event going to be? Is it going to be a fleet of spaceships? And they said, no. It's going to be a series of solar waves of love that will keep hitting Earth and shifting the consciousness and the frequency of everything on Earth up to the next level. So that's what they told me in 2022, and I'd never heard any of this. Then I found out about the solar flash, and then I went, wait a minute, solar flash is supposed to be an instantaneous thing. They told me it was going to be a series of things. So let me read to you again what, according to him, the Anshar told him sometime back before 2016. He says, I have said for a while that I was told that it was not one solar event, but a series of events that led up to one large event. He goes on to say, during my meeting with the LOC, I don't know who that is, while giving my briefing the time frame of 2018 through 2023-2024, that arose because of the new information shared with me by the Anshar. I was told that the elite had expected the final solar sneeze, in quotes, so apparently they called it a solar sneeze. I was told that the elite had expected the final solar sneeze to occur at the end of this solar minimum period, 2018 to 2019, from their estimates. So again, these elites are looking at projections through this technology, and they see something happening sometime after 2019, and they say it's a solar sneeze. Now, you know what I find interesting is, when did the pandemic occur? It's right in line. He's writing this long before the pandemic. It's right in line with that. So the whole pandemic nonsense seems to have this really interesting association with the solar flash. So I was told that the elite had expected the final solar sneeze to occur at the end of this solar minimum period, 2018-2019, from their estimates. Are we officially in solar minimum, he goes on to say, was the question of one of the people present. To my dismay, that question went unanswered, as the people being briefed were paying very close attention. So the truth is, we know the solar minimum did end right around 2018, 2019. We've entered the solar maximum. So they were wrong. They thought the solar minimum was going to happen, and then there was going to be the solar event. Again, they're trying to, I'm assuming they're looking at information and trying to figure it out. The truth is, the solar minimum happened, the most recent solar minimum happened, and that then is preceding the solar maximum. The solar maximum event we are in is the solar wave event. It started officially, according to my experiences, December 21st or 22nd of 2022. I remember they told me it's happening, it's starting, and then we went into March and April, and you saw what happened and what's happening now. And the world is changing so rapidly, and people are waking up so rapidly. So it's happening now. So technically they were right. After the solar minimum, then the solar event happens, but they're seeing it and they're thinking it's one event, and it's not. It's this continuous wave of solar events that will probably, if we just go by the estimate, the solar maximum is going to end somewhere around 2025. So that would mean 2023, 2024 is the best time for this final event to happen, because that's when the solar maximum will be at its greatest. And again, we're going through a solar maximum which so far has exceeded all of the scientific expectations of it in terms of the amount of solar radiation and plasma that's hitting the Earth. We've already exceeded, previous solar maximums. And we're going through an incursion event, which is the magnetic field of the Earth is shifting because the magnetic poles are kind of moving around, which means that the magnetic field is shrinking. So you have this combination of more solar radiation combined with less electromagnetic field to block out that radiation. Got yourself a solar wave event. Okay, so then he goes on to say, the elite began moving underground in large numbers based on this probable timeline. The programs, quote unquote, had used probable, I think he's talking about the Cozy Rev Mirror programs, the technology. The programs had used probable future technology to nail down the time of alien and suppressed technology disclosure. What is happening right now? What is happening right now is that there actually is an incredibly strong push. There are meetings going on behind closed doors in the United States Senate where actual, real whistleblowers are talking about the fact that humans have a space force, that they have technology that goes far beyond, and that extraterrestrials have been here, that all this stuff is real. And they're seeing with their technology that there's going to be, they're trying to nail down the time of alien and suppressed technology disclosure and the solar event. And according to him, none of them agreed on what the solar event would be, as many thought it would be a flash that would turn them into ascended light beings, while others expected it to be a terrible day for the planet Earth. Again, it all depends on your frequency. If you're in a narcissist frequency, then it's going to be a horrible day. If you're in a higher frequency, it's going to, as it said, turn you into an ascended being. He goes on to say, if the Anshar are correct, the true answer is somewhere between the two theories. The eggheads and the smart glass pads described all of this discouraging. I think he's talking about the looking glass technology. The smart glass pads described all of this occurring in the 2018 through 2023-2024 time window. I don't know who Sigmund is, but he says, Sigmund told me that now we are entering into solar minimum and the solar event has not occurred. This is back in 2016. It is agreed that it will most likely occur when the sun comes out of minimum and into maximum. This is a process that takes approximately 11 years to complete. If the Anshar are correct, we may need every bit of that time to prepare ourselves and manage our karma and vibrations. Okay, I don't want to read all that because that doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot to me. All right, I won't read any of that either. All right, so there you go. I found that to be very interesting. If you want to look at this, it's at the website exopolitics.org, and it is it's called The Coming Solar Flash and the Galactic Federation Q&A with Corey Good. So if you want to go read it yourself, go right ahead. I found that extremely interesting because it corroborated a lot of what I've been told. And I'm going to be honest with you, the reason why I'm researching it is because, you know, I get, when these solar storms hit, I go into another dimension, literally. Depending on the strength of the solar radiation, I'll go into a completely different mindset. And it's very easy for me to believe, and I'm able to, you know, communicate with higher dimensional beings like it's nothing. And then when the solar radiation kind of goes back to normal, I sort of come back into my 3D self, and then I wonder, is any of this real? So part of what I'm doing is I'm going to make sure that I haven't lost my marbles. And, you know, it's very helpful for me to see that somebody else is saying almost identically what I've been told. You know, so I don't buy everything these ufologists talk about. I think a lot of it is nonsense. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to judge Corey Good. He's a human being, but you know, looking into him personally, there's some things that, you know, I can't really find anything really wrong with the guy other than he's really human. But you know, it makes me definitely realize that he could definitely not be completely accurate about a lot of the stuff he talks about. And that's giving him the benefit of the doubt, because human beings, when you're dealing with you know, stuff that happens in a shamanic vision, or when you're dealing with telepathic communications, or, you know, it's very hard to know sometimes what's coming from your own unconscious and what's really happening. And then there's the whole, did you interpret that correctly? You know, all of that. And, you know, if he's going through similar things that I am, then, you know, he's just as likely to misinterpret things as I am. So I like to correlate a bunch of different knowledge from different unrelated sources. And the stuff that aligns, that's the stuff you can bank on. So the stuff that's aligning is that this is the solar flash event. We are in it. It's a bunch of solar waves. Each time one of these solar storm hits, there's, as you see, there's another either, you know, crazy thing that happens in politics, or there's another, you know, some kind of corruption is revealed. There's, you know, all this stuff about, you know, the movie Sound of Freedom is going crazy, and all of Hollywood is sort of, you know, splitting its britches over things. And, you know, more and more stuff is coming to light about things that's been going on for the past, especially the past 3 years, but even before that. And people are waking up. There's this really interesting thing that's happening where people are just waking up. You know, what I'm really enjoying is watching on YouTube. You know, one of the new things on YouTube is watching videos where people who were used to buy into the whole, really buy into the racism card, they're starting to wake up, and people are starting to realize that everybody's human and that color doesn't mean anything. And people who want to stay in a slave mentality are waking up to the reality that, wait a second, that's not the way I've been taught at all. People are human and nobody's better or worse than anybody else. And people are just waking up in all kinds of different ways. People are coming out of their victim mentalities. A lot of people are dropping their anger. A lot of people are becoming just more aware of the corruption in our world and all of the inconsistencies. And I see that every time that there's a solar storm that hits, there's some kind of awareness that pops up. So anyway, but I agree with one of the things that he said is that, we need every single second we can get to work on ourselves. So if you want to heal from this, and if you want to shift up, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to look at yourself. So, if you're like me, you're going to need some help. This is what the 90-day challenge is all about. And if you go on there and subscribe, you can just click play on the videos and I'm just doing the exercises. It's not me talking, it's just me doing very simple, powerful exercises that shift your energy up. You'll have an emotional experience, you'll have a psychological experience. It'll be helpful for you if you have people that you can talk to. It'll be helpful for you if you have a mentor, if you have a teacher, if you have a counselor, if you have a therapist. It'll be extremely helpful if you're working the 12 steps. And I'm creating 12 steps to shift up to 5D, but it's hard to do the 12 steps if you don't have a sponsor to work with. So as I've said before, probably 75%, if not more, of people who watch this channel qualify for some 12-step program. So in any case, don't isolate. Don't try and do this by yourself. It's helpful to have somebody that has a little more experience than you. It's very important. The thing that needs to get dropped is the ego. And one of the greatest ego traps is, I can do this myself. I'm going to be my own teacher. When people, I have another channel that has to do with recovering from narcissistic abuse, and those people that go to that channel are all, extremely emotionally damaged, and they need help. They absolutely need professional help, and they need 12-step help. And what'll be interesting to me is that they'll say, I've been working on myself, and my response will be, and how has that gone for you? Because if what's broken is your thinking, you can't fix your thinking with your broken thinking. The only way that works is if you have somebody who's willing to reflect back at you your own narcissism, your own insanity. This is why people don't like me on this channel. A lot of people come on here and want to pick fights with me because I tell you the truth. This is why I don't take questions anymore, because people write questions from their ignorance and their narcissism. That's not their fault. They're new to the channel. They haven't done any of the practices. And so I will reflect back to them what's really going on. And they don't like that, because staying isolated in your pain means you're staying isolated in your own narcissism. And narcissists don't like the light, just like the real ones. They don't like the light of the truth coming in to awaken them. So you're going to have to go through some kind of transformation that might be challenging to your ego. There's no way around it. And, again, some people it's going to be easier than others, but anyway. So if you want to shift, you're going to have to do the work. You can do the free stuff, go onto the channel, look at the playlists. If you're really serious, I would recommend that you subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, because there's other videos that I wanted to talk about. I decided not to because there's only so much time in the day. But other people who are talking about this, the messages they're getting is that there are going to be people who won't make it. And the people who won't make it are going to be the people who were unwilling to look at the things inside of them that aren't helping them. They're gonna hold on to their fear They're going to hold on to their ego. And when given the choice, the going out into the light of day and seeing yourself on all levels and being seen on all levels will be too frightening and painful, and they will choose to hold on to what they know, and they will shift down. And I'm more and more convinced that there's going to be at least 2 Earths, if not more. And you can't stay on this one any longer. Because right now we're kind of half and half. If you live in this world, if you choose to, you can live a powerful, conscious, spiritual life. It's challenging, it's difficult, but you can do it. But pretty soon you won't have that choice anymore. You'll have to shift up or shift down. And if you shift down, logic dictates that it's going to be that much harder. And it will be, people who have seen the shift down have said there's less color, it's dark, everybody's indoors, they're, living in communes that are controlled by the government, and they're, it's dark and blah, 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 blah. It's awful. But for a narcissist, that is better than having to die to yourself, because if you shift up, you're going to have to die to the 3D version of yourself that you are, just like Odin. Odin died to himself. He sacrificed himself to himself. So we're going to have to do that, all of us, if we're going to make it. All right, so that's it for me. Again, I only take questions from people who I recognize and are subscribed to the 90-day challenge or above. If not, I don't take any questions anymore. And I don't see anything here. Okay, that's it. Thank you. I wish you guys all the best. And yeah, more information to come. And my heart goes out to, the tremendous tragedy that's happened on Maui. I almost moved there. I mean, not almost. I was thinking of moving there. Good thing I didn't. Anyway, probably not the end of the challenging times that are going to come. There's probably going to be more. So don't be surprised, and don't let any of the mainstream media fear tactics work on you. You can stay completely safe from all of this if you're doing your practices. I've given you a bunch that you can do. If you do the practice to shift up your frequency, you'll be taken care of. I can guarantee you that. Okay, that's it, guys. Love you all. I'll see you all next time. Take care.